I would assume most of us grew up with ultra processed food. And when you grow up with something, you kind of just think it's normal. Of course, nothing is normal about it and nothing is natural about it. This shit is some shit. And once you figure it out, it just be like, man, like it explains a lot. It explains so much, so many problems that you might be having with like your skin, your health, anything. A lot of it can be explained by the fact that they're feeding us dog shit.
Obesity.
For the first time in 10 years, the numbers are going down.
1 in 8 American adults is now on a weight loss drug, as restaurants are launching
Right.
Ozempic menus.
Because they sell the problem and then they also sell a solution that both have probably really bad health risks. I don't know the health risks of Ozempic, but
With half-sized portions. But the food industry
can't imagine
has
it's
spent
good.
over a century engineering food you can't stop eating, and they're not about to let that go. Now, they're using AI to do it faster. Algorithms designing the exact flavor profile your brain is least able to resist. 70% of the American food supply is now ultra-processed.
Isn't
These
that
are
crazy,
taking
though?
over the super.
they studied us enough to know, like, you study humans, you know what gets the brain going, the addictive shit, and then you just put it all together to make, it seems like just a normal little snack, but no, a lot was put into it to make sure it's as addictive as possible.
Markets, often using protein labels and healthy-looking packaging as a Trojan horse, all the while meticulously engineering their products to be as addictive as possible. We now have protein Doritos,
Hello?
but my biggest weakness will always be the Pringle. If they're in the house, I'd inhale the whole tub, only to sit there feeling guilty, despite barely feeling like I'd eaten.
And
Which is
literally, it doesn't make you feel full.
strange, because
That's
the
the
plain
whole point.
potato is one of the most filling foods on earth. In studies measuring satiety per calorie, the boiled potato
It's also one of the most nasty.
wins by a landslide.
Right.
Nothing else comes close. So how did one of the
My
most
fault.
filling foods on earth become one of the easiest to overconsume? If you struggle to stop eating ultra-processed food, regardless of whether it claims to be healthy, this is a big reason why. With the rising protein trend and increasing advances in food engineering, this story is more important than ever. But to explain it, we need to go back to two famous brothers who couldn't agree on a single question. Should food be pleasurable? In the 1890s, Dr.
Pleasurable or profitable?
John Harvey Kellogg
I would
ran a
imagine.
health resort in Michigan. He believed bland food preserved moral purity. Too much flavor overstimulated the nervous system, so he invented cornflakes, which were intentionally tasteless. But his brother Will watched the patients suffer through them and saw something that John couldn't. People actually needed to want to eat them, so the menace
Okay.
added sugar. John was horrified. The brothers fell out for decades, but it was Will's version that won. He launched the Kellogg's Company in 1906, and sugar-sweetened cornflakes became one of the best-selling breakfast foods in America.
Like-
For the next few decades, companies competed for who could make the tastiest,
I don't know, there's gotta be like a middle ground, right?
most
Like,
convenient, and most affordable foods. Nobody chose Spam because it tasted better than
Weetabix.
fresh meat. I mean, look at it. They chose it because it lasted years and made a great ration. However, by the 1950s, food wasn't scarce anymore. There were a lot more options, so the challenge shifted from making food available to making it irresistible. And there was no better snack than the potato chip. Their invention was almost an accident. In 1853, a frustrated chef named George Crumb was handed back a plate of fried potatoes for being too thick and too soggy. Sarcastically, he sliced the potatoes as thin as he possibly could, fried them until they shattered, and doused them in salt. The customers loved them. For decades, chips were fragile luxuries, until
Hey, I love to see my people succeed.
Herman Lay figured out the packaging. Suddenly, they could travel, which was perfect timing. As families got busier and supermarkets replaced corner stores, convenience shifted from a novelty to somewhat of a necessity. In 1961, Lay's company merged with Frito to become Frito-Lays. And suddenly, there were chips in every aisle of every store in the country.
I was about to say.
Around the same time, a Mexican restaurant in Disneyland started cutting up leftover tortillas, frying them, and selling them as a snack. They called them Doritos, from the Spanish Doradito, meaning little golden things. Procter & Gamble, watching all of this, hired a chemist to build a superior
It sucks that it's bad for you because they really are good.
chip from scratch.
I'll give
he
it
pressed
that.
reconstituted potato dough into a perfect saddle shape
It's
that
just not
stacked
worth it.
without breaking. They called them newfangled potato chips, until they realized that sounded kinda dumb. So they dropped that and left them as Pringles. But there are a lot of chips competing with each other in supermarkets, and every company was seeking an edge. So they stopped hiring chefs and started hiring psychologists and scientists.
Yeah.
People understood what tasted good, but also why humans couldn't stop. And what they found would change everything. Your body runs on ancient hunger software. When energy drops, your hunger hormones rise. When you've had enough, fullness hormones rise, and you stop eating. That system evolved over millions of years, and for most of human history, it worked.
Why do I know what that is?
Because whole foods typically contain fiber, water, and have a structure that requires chewing and digestion. So by the time you've eaten enough calories from a boiled potato, your body already knows it. But what if you could deliver those calories before these signals had time to fire? That was the question Howard Moskowitz set out to answer. Moskowitz was a Harvard-trained taste researcher,
What an
and in his
evil
own
man.
words,
I started having meetings with product developers, and they told me if you could do this with a bunch of different ingredients simultaneously, maybe there's a bliss point
He's not evil, he's smart, and that's the problem.
that's really loved. Well, I did it, and by golly, there was.
the bliss point is a precise combination of ingredients that makes foods irresistible. It has 3 key pillars. Salt came first. It improves taste while suppressing bitterness and amplifying flavor, while also covering up chemical aftertastes. Fat was the second. It carries flavor while creating a rich mouthfeel. But more importantly, fat makes flavor linger. Each bite feels slightly more rewarding than the last. It pulls you forward. Sugar completed the triangle.
Yes.
In chips, this comes
Right.
mostly from the starch in the potato, which converts rapidly to glucose. Get all 3 ratios right simultaneously, and you get what researchers call hyperpalatable food. Combinations of salt, fat, and sugar that almost never occur together in nature. But food scientists also discovered a sneakier trick,
Food
vanishing
scientists.
calorie density. Take a Cheeto. It starts as cornstarch slurry, processed into a paste and puffed with air. It requires barely any chewing. It dissolves before your stomach even registers it, which makes it incredibly difficult to just eat one. This is also partially why some fast food restaurants inject their chicken with marinade through hundreds of needles. It makes it much quicker to break down and digest. As a food researcher pointed out, it's essentially been pre-chewed. One restaurant designer likened these products to adult baby food. Even sound is engineered. The
I think, wait, isn't that how they do like hot dogs?
specific pop of a Pringles can was carefully designed to signal freshness and create a ritualistic moment that primes you to start eating before the lid is
brother.
fully off.
Like, it's also a turn off to know how much they like put into it, like how many triggers they put for your brain.
This is all in service of the
Ew.
same goal: make it the most craveable foods possible. And looking at the steady rise in calories the average American consumes, it worked. But researchers started linking ultra-processed foods to something they call conditioned hypereating, a learned drive to keep consuming highly rewarding food well beyond your actual energy needs. And when the CEOs of the world's largest food companies caught wind of this, they all gathered privately to have a meeting to discuss. We only know what happened because an investigative journalist named Michael Moss tracked down the people who were in the room. But before we get to what happened, it's much harder.
His hair is suspiciously well maintained, like for an old dude. You know what I mean? Like, it's just too, like, it's too perfect. I know what you do in your spare time, bro.
Track down the people
I
who
know
are in
what
the
you do.
room.
I
But
know what
before
you
we get
do.
to what happened, it's much harder to avoid over-consuming calories today than it was 50 years ago. When I was eating intuitively, I'll just intuitively get fat. So I started tracking, and I used MacroFactor, the sponsor of today's episode.
Ooh, I couldn't smell the ad coming. Ooh, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you for being so good at your I was gonna say slipping. I don't really know how to say it, but I'm just
Back to
glad
the
I
meeting.
caught it. Right.
One of the CEOs stood up and gave a presentation on the rising obesity rates. Ultra-processed food was everywhere, and their
Twisties.
products were part of the problem, especially for children. But if they voluntarily made their products less craveable, their competitors wouldn't. They'd lose market share, and the obesity numbers wouldn't budge. So nothing really changed. When companies did try to shift, the market punished them. In the 80s, Cheez-It released a low-salt version. But consumers, who were already used to the original flavor,
Didn't
barely
fuck with
bought it, and the product was taken off the shelves. In 2010, PepsiCo's CEO tried to reposition the company around healthier products, but Wall Street pushed back as the stock dropped. When companies have made their products less rewarding, they've often been punished by the market. This is why inside these companies,
It's sick though, because it's like, damn. I mean, you already got the people hooked on it. You feel me? So to try to go back on it when you know you have them like programmed to want all that shit, it's like, I see it, but it's too late. It's fucked up that it's too late. It's fucked up that people can't, like, you know what I'm saying? It's the damage is done. But you did the damage, you feel me? So I don't know. It's a weird middle ground. And it's also weird and messed up that they end up just prioritizing like, hey bro, we just gotta stay rich. So shit, give them back to
executives
give them the same
talk
shit.
about share
Give
of the
it-
stomach
put it-
and frequency of
Nestle.
use, describing their ideal customers as heavy users.
Right.
While nutrition barely enters the conversation, Coca-Cola's internal materials
care.
identified water as its primary competitor. Gatorade mentioned something similar. Public statements matter less than purchasing data because companies don't optimize for what people say they want. They optimize for what people buy.
Literally.
Around
It was
70%
borderline a test being like, okay, damn, here. And then they see they shit drop and it's like, y'all don't even want this for real.
of the US food supply is considered ultra-processed.
Y'all don't
Today,
want change.
over 70% of American adults are overweight or obese. The children they were warned about in that meeting are now the adults with diet-related disease. The same tricks get applied to products which are marketed as healthy. The 90s low-fat craze is the clearest example. Companies like Snackwells pulled out the fat and replaced it with sugar. But people just ate more because it felt healthy, only to end up fatter, also known as the Snackwell effect. This is more or less what I used to do with protein bars. And as a result of the surge in ultra-processed foods, we now have food swamps, neighborhoods where fast food chains and dollar stores, stocked up with ultra-processed products, vastly outnumber fresh produce, and food deserts where there just aren't as much affordable fresh foods. So are we just all doomed to the consequences of our ultra-processed
That's what they're trying to get to the point of.
environment?
What is this clip? Hold on.
We just all doomed
Okay.
to the consequences of our ultra-processed environment.
I don't want to know.
Not exactly.
Actually.
Banning ultra-processed food isn't realistic. These products were invented for reasons. For soldiers in trenches, for families without the time or money to cook from scratch. They solve genuine problems. Pasteurization stops people dying violently from tuberculosis, and fortifying food with vitamins helps prevent deficiencies. Which is why, as great as it can be, companies going back to minimal ingredients is not necessarily better. Processing itself isn't the enemy. The problem is hyper-optimization for craveability over satiety. That gap between processed and engineered to bypass your hunger signals is where the damage happens.
Literally. And I feel like certain companies, they just have like ingredients that aren't necessary. Like, of course, Red 40, other illegal chemical dyes that I cannot ever shut up about, because ever since I learned about it, it's just been like a damn, like, I don't know. Once you go into the rabbit hole about it, I swear you'll feel how I feel. You'll become a Red 40 agent. And it's really, I use Red 40 as a spokesperson, but it's really all it is together that is the bad thing, because you could take out the Red 40 and it could still be addictive and bad for you.
You don't have to jump from drive-thrus to eating the type of food a lizard gets on his birthday because a shirtless influencer told you to, or shouted at the baked goods in the
Wasn't he
supermarket.
exposed?
Look at the ingredients. Wake the fuck up.
I've always loved food, so what helped me was understanding these systems and incentives shaping health, which is why I started this channel, so subscribe for more of that. But more practically, this is what the evidence suggests is the most effective way to get and stay in better shape. Redesign your environment, not your willpower.
You got solutions. Hey, Nature Valley.
You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. You want to make the hyper-palatable stuff slightly harder to reach, and whole food slightly easier. Small environmental changes can allow you to channel your willpower more effectively.
Yeah.
Use foods that increase satiety. Not all calories affect hunger equally. Foods high in protein, fiber, and water tend to keep you fuller for longer. Ironically, some modern products, like high-protein yogurts or the occasional
I used to wonder, this is unrelated, I used to wonder why fiber is spelled in 2 different ways sometimes. And I believe, because I never looked it up, but I also haven't questioned it in Hellas, I think it's like a UK versus USA type of spelling. You know how like color is like color, like the word color, you spell it differently. And they got like a U in it and shit. And I used to be like, when I was a kid, I used to be confused. I was like, bitch, which one is color? Like, which one? Like,
diet sodas can really help.
so maybe
Make
that's
whole
fiber.
foods rewarding. The same principles that make junk food irresistible, salt,
That's
fat,
the
sugar,
problem.
umami, texture, can work just as well on whole foods. If you combine them with tricks to make your meals more filling, it makes fat loss or weight maintenance a lot easier, as you'll naturally gravitate to more whole foods. I
Those
started making
Miracle
healthier
Noodles.
versions of the foods I craved at home, so Big Macs, Crunch Wraps, and curries. But it's about
Yes.
finding meals that you can actually enjoy and stick to. Overeating ultra-processed foods isn't random. It's a predictable outcome of decades of optimization pointed directly at your brain. But once you see the system, you stop losing to it by accident.
I respect that. I respect that. I truly, duly do. So yeah, I like that he has solutions at the end of the video. Shout out to the dude, Josh. Because most people would have just been like, yeah, bro, this is the problem, and we're fucking doomed. And that's honestly what I was expecting, and probably what I put the title as. But it's good to have that, like, you can show like the bad, but you need the optimism, because if you just go down the rabbit hole and you fill with pessimism, it's only gonna end bad for you, because eventually you're gonna figure out that there's really like, it's gonna get hopeless. That's all I can say. It's gonna get hopeless if you don't make the hope. So yeah, man, this is ultra processed food. It's pretty much everywhere, and it seems normal. It's not normal. It shouldn't be normal. It became normal. And yeah, because I just know growing up, I was obsessed with like skincare and shit. I was like, what is the problem? Like, you know, the little health defects, is that the word? That's not defects, I don't know, but you just know it has its fucking cons, and it takes it out on your body, like it really does. So hopefully, if you didn't already know about this, you know about it now. And I'm wrapping it up. That's the video.